My name is Evie Holst, and I am here with some great colleagues from In-Situ, Andrew Lusenhop and Carrie Caslow. And we're very happy to welcome all of you to our first Innovator Showcase. We're very excited about this, to share this with you, particularly with In-Situ. They played kind of a guinea pig role for us as we launched a new program last year. We're going to talk a little bit about that. But before we get going, I just wanted to share with you a couple of things about this series. So this series is really kind of a front row seat to both large and small different organizations that are innovating in the water industry. And some of these come to us through programs such as Erie Hack, which is one of Cleveland Water Alliance's most well-known branded programs. But also through our open innovation programming, which we also launched last year. And that's essentially a program where different industry players identify needs for innovation in the water industry. And we put out calls to innovators around the world to help come up with solutions. And then thirdly, through our test beds. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that because this year we're officially launching our Lake Erie Watershed testbed for Internet of Things or IoT technologies. So just a touch of background about that. The Lake Erie Watershed testbed is really focused on supporting innovators and technologies that would deploy within the natural environment. So technologies that might deploy inside of a pond or next to a stream or in an open body of water. Obviously, we're specifically focused on freshwater technologies here in the Midwest with the Great Lakes. But one of the things that we've been working on at Cleveland Water Alliance to enable Internet of Things technologies to test their technologies or demonstrate their technologies here is building out a telecommunications network to enable deployment in all kinds of different areas. So what you see here on this map is Lake Erie, essentially unconnected. This is the way it's been for thousands of years, but Cleveland Water Alliance has been working to actually build out some connectivity through the use of LoRaWAN or long range wide area network telecommunications. And this is a picture of the investments we have to date. So wherever you see kind of these bubbles of coverage, that means that we can enable different types of digital technologies to deploy anywhere within those spaces. And we are in the process of building out really across the US side of Lake Erie. So this is ongoing. We're going to be deploying a whole host of additional gateways and smart technologies over this summer. And that would include the ability to really track in real time things like weather. We have a number of weather buoys that have been out there for quite some time, but additional technologies that would include water properties, tracking of harmful algal blooms, nitrates, maybe at some point E. coli, and over time, more and more different types of technologies for the Internet of Things sort of sector of the water industry. And Cleveland Water Alliance will be deploying over 100 different IoT devices this summer. So all of those devices then become, in turn, technology we can use to benchmark newer innovations and provide comparison data. So all of this for our Lake Erie region in turn provides a lot of data points, and this data can be used for decision support, for example, for different utilities, and it can also be used for research and hopefully to really promote additional opportunities for innovation. So that's the context of our discussion here today with In-Situ because we did a soft launch of this program last summer, and we opened it up only to a few different companies, and In-Situ is one of them. They've been a great partner in this, and we're excited to talk with In-Situ today. So let me start out with you, Carrie. Can you give us a little bit of background about your work in In-Situ and how you came to be with the company and work on this technology?
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Carrie Caslow, and I'm one of the application development managers with the team here at In-Situ, and I kind of cover the surface water market segment. So my background, I worked on a stormwater project with the U.S. Geological Survey for about 9 years. And then I kind of took another position where I was doing more of a consulting role, and really expanded my horizons of what I was actually looking at. So, there's so much outside of just stormwater. So there's, your agriculture monitoring, there's estuary monitoring, there's so much out there outside of stormwater. So it really opened horizons for me. And I've been super excited to be here and work on these developing technologies and stuff. So excited to be here talking to you guys today too.
Wonderful. We're so happy to have you, Carrie. And Andrew, I really got to know you a little bit more actually last summer as we were starting out with deploying In-Situ products in our testbed. Tell us about your background and how you came to be with us today too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'm the regional sales manager for our Midwest region, which is, mostly consists of the Great Lakes. And my background is really selling and consulting into environmental related matters. So it actually started probably about 10 years ago when I was working more on the manufacturing side of things and making sure that, things are up to standard, that the environmental conditions, met certain requirements. And that transitioned into more water related type of applications. And so prior to me joining In-Situ about 2.5 years ago, I actually came from a testing laboratory that would actually take in physical samples, not only water, but food and, a whole bunch of different stuff. And for me, just being able to get out and collaborate with, our customers, equipment users, understand their challenges, that's just always been a big part of what I've been doing. And so since I've come over to In-Situ about 2.5 years ago, it's just been a lot of fun. Obviously, there's a lot of innovation happening here. There's a very diverse group of folks that we're able to connect with, and Cleveland Water Alliance is one of them. So we're about a year into this relationship, and it's been awesome, and it's just beginning.
That's great. Well, I have so much I want to cover with the two of you today. I want to spend a little time talking about, growth in the IoT market. And, I want to talk about kind of, In-Situ specifically, both historically and going forward. And so I think I want to ask you both about, the origin story for In-Situ. Tell us about the background of In-Situ and kind of some of the evolution over time.
Sure. Yeah. So In-Situ, we've been around since 1976. We're a second generation family owned business. And for the majority of our early existence, we were more focused on groundwater type applications, pressure transducers. We had some multi-parameter probes for, mostly groundwater, I would say. But I guess as we evolved, it was around 2004, we actually introduced the first optical dissolved oxygen sensor into the environmental market. And that same year, we actually launched our first multi-parameter probe as well, or multi-parameter sonde. And so that really kickstarted us into, getting involved in more surface water type applications. So we've been doing that for a while. I mean, I guess a while is relative these days. I know there's companies been doing it much longer than we have. But our big breakthrough, I guess it really came when we launched our AquaTrol 600 and 500 multi-parameter sonde platforms. Because up until about 5-6 years ago, when these platforms were launched, we just didn't really have a differentiating piece of technology that fit well into a lot of the surface water applications that we were seeing, especially in this region alone. So once those equipment and that technology got exposure and we started having success with it, not only here in the States or here in the region, but worldwide, it really did accelerate our growth. And I would say, at this point, the majority of the work we're doing is on the surface water side of things. I think that makes a lot of sense, obviously, considering what surface water occupies over 70% of the earth. So there's a lot going on in that world, if you will. But we're definitely excited about what we're doing on the surface water side, and being primarily groundwater in our early existence, that's still a big part of what we're doing today as well.
And would you say there, specific lessons that you learned from the groundwater background that helped you to transition to the surface water? I mean, were there specific parameters you focused in on to leverage into that space?
Yeah, I mean, there was, even with groundwater applications, there are still parameters of interest outside of your typical water levels, your conductivities, pH is looked at, turbidity is looked at, dissolved oxygen. So, as we transition, we realize that in some circumstances, there's not a big difference in, what you can be deploying, in a groundwater monitoring well versus what you could be using and finding value for using in a surface water type application. So we certainly learned, I guess, on that scale. And then, typical customer challenges that we've run into over the years. And, as we developed as an organization, pertaining to, having easy access to data, deployment methods, data management platforms, so on and so forth. So many of that can carry over to groundwater, surface water, multiple different types of applications. So that certainly helped us as we were developing new technology, as we continue to grow on the surface water side.
And at the end of the day, everything kind of tying into what Andrew was talking about, all of the groundwater and surface water, it's really tied in together anyway, too, because it's really just one big system. So a lot of what folks were monitoring in groundwater, like Andrew was saying, is also monitored in surface water. So it was just kind of a natural evolution to really tie, everything together.
So talk a little bit about, kind of moving into the space of not only automated, but real-time monitoring opportunities, and how has that evolution affected In-Situ and the product development focus?
Sure. So obviously, one of the big things that we've realized is affordability and scalability are extremely important, because without them, it makes it very hard for the industry to adopt new ways of doing things, or introducing new technology to their programs. So, one of the things for us is, we've always made it a point to get great feedback from our customers and folks that are using water monitoring instrumentation. And when it came to IoT monitoring, we've had telemetry offerings available to the marketplace for quite a while, but we were able to launch a new platform, ViewLink, which was what was used for our first testbed deployments. And it was the first system that we were able to design and manufacture ourselves. So this was exciting for us because we were able to bring a piece of technology to the marketplace that was affordable, easy to set up, that could tie into not only our existing sensor offering, but eventually be able to integrate with third-party sensors as well. So, we see IoT monitoring and smart watershed management is the future. And there's certainly a lot of people that want to make that a reality right now. So whether it's, ViewLink or any other exciting new piece of technology that someone else is introducing to the marketplace, I think we're going to continue seeing advancements in that area, that make it easier for people to implement.
And Andrew touched on one thing that was kind of a key word there, was that smart watershed. That kind of goes back to your introduction, Evie, of how you want to expand the monitoring network over all of Lake Erie, right? So a smart watershed, what we kind of think of is a bunch of monitoring devices and a bunch of systems kind of all tied together. So we can really watch every tributary that feeds into a major river, that feeds into a lake, and have it all connected through the cloud, have it all connected through the internet. So all of that data is really right at your fingertips. That's kind of what a smart watershed is.
Well, that's like a perfect segue, actually, because I have a few statistics I'm going to read off here about market growth. So according to a January 2022 report by Markets and Markets, the global environmental monitoring market, which includes sensors for monitoring air, water, and soil, is projected to grow at compound annual growth rate of 4.5% over the next 5 years, to about $17.9 billion by 2026. But water quality sensors alone are at a compound annual growth rate of nearly double that. So that's kind of amazing. And IoT, the IoT sort of subsector here, I think is really channeling that growth because of that sort of, data accessibility and, with companies like In-Situ bringing some of the cost of sensors down. But I would really love to get your perspective about that market growth and who are the players that are driving that growth? In other words, who are the market adopters of this technology, and where do you think this trend is headed?
Yeah, I'll speak to definitely the trend in where it's heading, and for me personally, as far as who's adopting this, I mean it's pretty widespread. We'll see it in mining applications, we'll see it in obviously surface water applications, we'll see it with a whole bunch of different types of users. But you're absolutely right. We are seeing the benefits of IoT technology in the water sector growing. And that's really, I think, in direct effect to how the technologies are continuing to improve. This helps with affordability, and from a practical standpoint, we're seeing the benefits to smart watershed management. So there's certainly more awareness that IoT solutions in the water sector are growing. I think the benefits to using IoT technologies are recognized by a lot of people. I know we touched on it, but streamlining and making better use of data coming in some cases, just cost savings alone from preventing to have to go out to a field to extract their data, saving time, reacting to current conditions. It really goes on and on. So as far as, certain needs that, not only we are addressing, but other folks that are bringing these types of technologies to the marketplace, really just trying to implement new technologies that, like you said, EB, that are, more affordable, that are easy to implement, and obviously they need to be reliable as well. So that's clearly where the Cleveland Water Alliance's Testbed program comes into play, where, it gives kind of a non-threatening access to information and access to just evaluating technology before having those real discussions with folks like us and anyone else that's bringing new technology to the marketplace. So with that being said, as the technologies continue to improve, as we continue to get more feedback, as there's continuing to be more real life success stories with moving to this way of, monitoring, I think that just in and of itself is going to really help drive the growth, and we really don't see it slowing down anytime soon.
And there are so many different groups that are monitoring, kind of like you alluded to, Evie. There's a really growing citizen science sector that I know Cleveland Water Alliance has done a lot of work with. As people become more aware of what's really going on in the environment, people are wanting to take that initiative to, step up and really help out. So that is a segment that's growing. We also see a lot of growth in the research market, whether that's university or private researchers, those kind of things. And then, of course, your drinking water folks, they're doing a lot of monitoring as well, because as their reservoirs or whatever their source water body is changing significantly, they're able to monitor what's coming downstream so that they can alter, their processes to actually treat the water to get to the rest of us. So there's a lot of evolution, and there are a lot of monitoring capabilities out there and I'm really excited to see where all these different groups go with this technology.
I love that you mentioned the water treatment side of things, Carrie. I think that's where we've heard some of the some really compelling stories. So, here in Ohio, obviously we have we made it into the news several years back because of the harmful algal bloom that impacted Toledo, the city of Toledo, and the water quality was very dangerous, and the harmful algal bloom had a release of toxicities that affected the drinking water, and was quite expensive actually to address. And so one of the big interests here in Ohio, and where a big spotlight is from the rest of the world as harmful algal blooms are on the rise, is how do we use some of this real-time sensor technology for early warning systems, and so that operators inside of water treatment plants have significant advance notice whenever possible to change what they're doing in order to mitigate some of those risks. And then you have other utilities, certainly here in the state, that have issues with hypoxia. So different levels of oxygen in the water will vary some of the treatments that that these utilities will do. I would love to hear some of the success stories of some of the technologies that you have deployed, some of your evolution of different sensors and how that's impacted some real life situations.
Yeah. So we've got one really great success story that I think we're actually writing a physical success story for our blog that you guys should definitely check out when it's published. But it's Lake Tech out in California. So they're actually using our algae sensors and the dissolved oxygen sensors, just how you were talking about monitoring for hypoxic and eutrophic conditions. But one of their biggest success stories was at this recreational lake out by San Francisco. So what they did was they deployed this buoy with some phycocyanin sensors and also some dissolved oxygen sensors, and they installed some additional technologies like aeration systems and those kind of things to really take care of the harmful algae blooms. They deployed all of this stuff because there was, like I said, it was a recreational lake, so they were often shutting the beach down because of these harmful algae blooms, which was really impacting the number of people that were coming to the park. And of course, it just smells funny, looks funny, all that kind of stuff. Nobody wants to play at that point, right? So with having the sensor technology combined with the treatment systems and things, they were actually able to see over time how the lake improved. So the dissolved oxygen literally went from 0 up to 4 milligrams per liter over a year, which is a really drastic change for anybody that knows anything about science. It's a huge change. And with the phycocyanin sensors, they were really able to determine if the levels of harmful algae were going up or down, and whether it was going to be safe for people to swim in the lake or do any kind of recreation in the lake. So that was a major success story for us.
Could you talk a little bit about, I think that's a nuance that some people may not be aware of, is that there are sensors for the algae itself, and then there are sensors also for the toxins that the algae can release. Could you talk a little bit about that nuance so our audience understands?
Yeah. So it's not necessarily the toxins that they release, but we have 3 different types of sensors. We have a chlorophyll A sensor, which is going to measure anything that, of course, puts out chlorophyll. So that's going to be your normal algae and plant species. And then we have phycocyanin and phycoerythrin sensors, which are phycobiliproteins that are in cyanobacteria, which is actually just a bacteria and not necessarily a plant. So your normal plant species don't have these phycobiliproteins. So it's really is a special sensor more catered towards those harmful algae blooms with the cyanobacteria, as opposed to just any kind of normal plant growth.
That's great. That makes a lot of sense. Well, I know one of the other things that has been very striking for me over the last couple of years of having conversations with researchers and with utility operators, when they're looking at data coming from potentially real-time sensors, and they traditionally they've had kind of specific devices that they might use, and then having additional devices that are maybe not as expensive, but it gives them the opportunity to deploy more because they're less expensive. What an epiphany I've seen from some of these researchers and operators of okay, so suddenly we can sort of see things coming at us, or we can see things happening in the surrounding environment of where we've historically had sensors that tell us more information. Andrew, could you talk a little bit about kind of how you've seen some of the players in the market start to understand the possibilities of that and how it's maybe changed the way that they're thinking and the way they're approaching their own work.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's extremely important for, anyone that's out there doing their research and, setting up these monitoring stations to get the best use of the resources that they have available. There's not one size fits all for every application. So there's, for us, for instance, we compete against larger platforms that can hold more sensors, but at the same time, we've run into plenty of applications that don't necessarily need that full suite of sensors. So, with our multi-parameter instrumentation now, as it as it stands, maybe it's starting off with a baseline study to understand just kind of from an indication standpoint what might be happening with the conditions. And, with that, we could deploy a sonde with just, chlorophyll A on there and, a few of the other parameters instead of dialing in on specific glycobilic proteins. So for some of these, I wouldn't say smaller case studies because, a lot of these are big case studies, but we're able to implement an affordable solution that just helps them get better use of their data, expanding the network, trying to understand, what's causing the effect on, certain fish migration, for instance. There's so much that people can do, but I think there's so much that people are limited to doing, just by what they have available to them. So, we certainly have solutions that kind of fit into certain niches as it pertains to that. But, one of the big things for us is just, understanding kind of what people's challenges are, what people want to do in excess to what they already have going on. And if there's any limitations to why they aren't able to put an ideal monitoring program in place, hopefully we can uncover that and find a way for us to fit in.
Well, one of the things that I think is really exciting is, so last summer, I think we had 2 deployments with you, didn't we, Andrew, or was it just one?
We had 2. So we had one that was just more kind of, I wouldn't call it a formal test bed deployment. And it was just monitoring some basic water parameters on, I think it was Old Woman Creek, which went well. The data lined up really well. It was just really more of a showcase type of situation because it was installed side by side with some other technologies. But then the formal deployment that we had was really demonstrating the ViewLink telemetry system. So we were able to basically install that on the Maumee River connected to a pressure transducer. And it wasn't anything, necessarily out of the ordinary from what people have done in the past, but it's really an understanding for, hey, listen, we have a really easy to put together, a low cost solution for monitoring stage and getting ahead of flooding conditions that could, benefit a real world situation. So I think that was the first test bed deployment that we had, and it might have been the first one in general, but I think it set the stage for, what we can do with this, right? We can utilize these test beds to not only help with current issues and current conditions that are going on, but again, just as kind of a low pressure way of allowing folks to do their own evaluations on newer technology that they may not be familiar with.
And we always listen to the feedback that you guys have too, and we take that back to our engineers and stuff who are always continuing development on our different products. So that's been one nice thing about the test bed also.
I've noticed. I love hearing that. Of course, Gary, you could say that as many times as you want. One of the things that I've noticed interfacing with people who have had interest in using the test beds is that it seems like it's a process that helps people consider what it is they want to know. You know what I mean? So if you have the opportunity to deploy at a stream as well as, near a beach and in the middle of the lake, kind of refine how you want to see a comparison, for example, with other technologies under different types of conditions. Could you talk a little bit about how the process of kind of working through the intake form that we do and asking different questions. How has that affected how you think about doing test deployments?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really just gets the wheels turning, right? I mean, I think for what we were introduced to with the Testbed program, if you will, there's a lot of excitement, initial excitement about just being able to kind of get something out there, and that really falls away from, I think, our process of doing these demonstrations. We want to understand a customer's challenge. We want to understand why they're interested in looking at new technology. There's a whole list of things that we want to address prior to just getting something out there to showcase. So I think with the intake form, it really, just helped us continually, understand, there are going to be different scenarios. Like, let's try to dial in on a specific real world example that could really impact what's going on in the specific region. With some of the questions, like, what's the maintenance behind this? How long is the training, and everything like that. It really helped us kind of understand what kind of takeaways we want to get out of this as well. So, when it's all said and done, I know the ViewLink deployment, that's less than a year old too. Sometimes these things take a little bit longer for you to get good feedback, good data, and all that stuff. But I think the intake form really helps you kind of dial in. Whereas, when it was first introduced, it seemed as if, okay, we're going to get something out there. We're going to rely on, the reputable network that Cleveland Water Alliance has to get their eyes on it. The intake form helped us be a little bit more focused with it.
That's great. I love hearing that. I know we have another deployment to look forward to this spring with you guys. Could you tell us about that?
Yes, I sure can. And this is really exciting for everyone involved. So just quick background. So back at Blue Tech Week, where I was actually able to present on ViewLink, you had actually connected me with Frederick from a company called BioOceanair, and he was also involved in that event. And as it turns out, they currently use our multi-parameter sondes to gather data for their predictive algorithm, which predicts water quality events before they happen. And so, they've had success using our sondes to get them the data that they need to plug into this algorithm and help, with these predictive situations. So as we continue to stay in contact with them, with the understanding that they were also amidst some major growth and expansion into the US, we came up with the idea to partner with them to combine our technologies into one test bed dedicated to monitoring for harmful algal blooms. I know you touched on it, but I know from experience too that this region is big on harmful algal blooms. They have kept us busy for sure. So monitoring for harmful algal blooms is something that we personally had success with our equipment for quite a while. And I know from experience, it's such an important issue. So if we could successfully combine our monitoring technologies for HABs and then combine it with BioOceanair's predictive algorithm centered around predicting blooms before they happen, this could be a highly reliable and have a major impact on people from what they can do from a monitoring standpoint. So we're really excited about it. I know BioOceanair has had major success with the algorithm side of things, but we haven't combined these two specific setups together. So our plan is to deploy one of our buoy systems at the City of Toledo water intake crib. We're going to telemeter that data using the ViewLink, and then we're going to actually share that data from our data hosting platform, which is called HydroView. We're going to share it with them using HydroView's public API. So then they can use what they need from that data to plug into the algorithm and hopefully get, some trends that make sense and really help with predicting these things in the future. So just from an equipment standpoint, again, buoy system, telemetry, we're actually going to couple two of our Aquatrol 600 sondes in series connected to the one telemetry system, and then use temperature conductivity, pH ORP, dissolved oxygen, turbidity, chlorophyll A, blue-green algae phycocyanin, and then FDOM, so fluorescent dissolved organic matter, and then nitrates to capture the parameters of interest for the study. And we're actually getting ready to do this here pretty soon. So I know we've been in recent discussion. We're getting the equipment list ready. We should have it out the door at some point next week. And I think the plan is to hopefully get this deployed by the 3rd week of this month. So it's definitely coming up here pretty quickly. And again, it's just going to give the people the opportunity to not only evaluate this system as a whole, but to also gain exposure to ours and BioOcean technologies on their own. So this is really a fantastic opportunity for everyone involved.
Yeah, we were really excited. BioOcean also did a deployment last summer with us. And we were really excited to introduce you to each other. Actually, that was sort of an unexpected benefit of the program. We're excited to be doing more of that. And then we'll probably do one of these with BioOcean for anyone who's interested. We'll keep everyone informed, but we're really excited about this this partnership that you guys are doing together. I'm looking at maybe starting to open this up to some questions from the audience. But before I do that, I do want to just ask, what are some of the things that you hope for out of our testbed program sort of going into the future? I mean, we want to continue evolving this, obviously, so that it's useful to organizations like you. And like I say, we see a fit for both, really early stage startup companies as well as more mature companies like yours. And, we would love to kind of hear, like, what are your hopes and dreams for how we can help support you bringing new products to market in the future?
Yeah, so I guess I can speak on behalf of that too, since I was involved with the, I guess, initial deployment. But I'll start by saying that we can't support enough what Cleveland Water Alliance is doing with these testbed sites. With having folks on the team like Carrie and many others that used to be the ones gathering the data, out in the field. It's evident how important getting better data and making better use of the resources you have in this industry, and many others for that matter, is. So I think what Cleveland Water Alliance has done is created an easy avenue for people to not only demonstrate their technology for equipment users to make their own evaluation on what's being put out there and what can make a difference to what they're doing. So, before deciding to take the next steps and connecting to discuss further, I mean, this gives them a great opportunity for that. I think, as we continue to evolve and we continue to bring out, new technologies, because I know a lot of what we've put out there to this point are what we're going to be putting out there with this next deployment. It's somewhat tried and true technology. It's just, not as a whole yet. We're certainly going to be developing new pieces of technology that, that address specific needs of the marketplace. So, one thing that we're going to definitely be interested in is at some point getting stuff out there that maybe isn't tested, maybe from a beta standpoint, getting feedback on how it works, and maybe can help, bring some fine tuning techniques to the design table before it's officially launched. And then, I think not only for us, but I'm sure other folks that are going to be getting involved in these testbed deployments, just making sure that, the folks that are, watching what's going on, that are making the evaluations, if they have any questions, comments, or if they want to connect, just making sure that, we have access to each other. Right now it's somewhat informal as far as who's taking a look at these things from at least our standpoint, which is fine, because we understand that, there's a fantastic network of people that would be interested. But just, being able to reconvene, even if, hey, listen, this isn't something for us, this is something that we're doing. Any of that type of feedback's important as well. So from my perspective, just making sure that everyone stays connected throughout the process, and make sure all our goals are aligned going into it, and, addressing everything when it's done.
Yeah, and we always want to hear about sensor technologies that are going to be needed in the future. I know there's a lot out there, like you mentioned early on, monitoring for E. coli and things, and there's not really a sensor out there specifically for that right now. So those are the kind of things that as those markets kind of grow, we really want to hear that feedback, because we will prioritize our development based on what it is that, scientists actually do need for their monitoring. In addition to that, when it comes to like the mobile application, because all of our equipment is mobile application based, if there's any piece of data that would be beneficial to whatever scientific study is going on, for sure let us know, because we're always wanting to cater the development of our products to what our customers need.
Well, I think that's a great point on the E. coli. We certainly hear about a lot of interest from different stakeholders about E. coli. It's usually the property, the contaminant that's monitored for beach closings, for example. And for the most part, that's still a fairly manual process. So can you speak at all to things like that, like potentially monitoring for E. coli, or other things that you're hearing from the market that we might, give us a teaser of what we might be able to look forward to from In-Situ?
And so I don't necessarily want to give everything away, because I'm sure Andrew would get mad at me later on. But, we do hear that all the time, that folks would like a tryptophan sensor, for example, because you can correlate that to COD, for example, or you can correlate that to E. coli. But outside of that, right now, we actually do have sensor technology that people are correlating to things like E. coli right now. So there's a lot of studies out there where people are correlating, let's say, turbidity and conductivity and discharge data to an actual E. coli value. So there is possibility to kind of get a rough number for some of these predictive things too, with sensors that we already have. But yeah, I know that's definitely a popular request.
Yeah,
Anything? I was just going to say, Andrew, anything you want to tease
Yeah,
here?
no, I was going to say, to Carrie's point, I mean, it starts with the conversations that we have with our customers. I remember when I started at In-Situ, for like the first 3 months, there were days that literally all I did was talk to folks that I had reached out to, asking to discuss the work they're doing and how they're using equipment, whether it's ours or whether it was somebody else's. And, and having those conversations, you really do uncover a lot. And one of the things that I've been, just most proud of and excited about working for In-Situ is just the amount of, effort that goes into the R&D side of things. We've been able to launch, lots of new products in response to the market needs, and in response to the feedback that we've gotten from those that we've talked to. So, we do have some exciting things, let's put it that way, that we're going to be launching here soon, that have, specific issues and specific addressable things in mind. So this year was exciting. Last year with ViewLink was obviously exciting. The launch of the new fluorometers has really helped, but we have some pretty big developments that we have coming soon. So, we're already doing some minor evaluations with existing customers of ours, because a lot of what we do and a lot of what we launch is going to be compatible with, everything else that we currently offer. So it helps us with early evaluations before things come out, to allow people to get familiar with how things work. So there's some, I know that's a long way of not giving you a direct answer, but we got some exciting things coming out here pretty soon.
Great. Well, we'll be very excited to hear more about that. So I'm gonna start opening us up to some of the questions from our audience, with the first question of, how are you planning to make this critical public Lake Erie data accessible to third parties, including citizens, scientists, and organizations? How will you integrate this with other available data?
So that is definitely something that we are still ironing out. Obviously, we want to make this data accessible to anybody that would find value from it, because that's a big part of what we're doing. We want to make sure that, obviously people are understanding the data that our sensors are capturing. And then as this predictive algorithm gets integrated with our system, obviously keeping the public up to speed on, what the success looks like there as well. So I guess with this test bed stuff being so new, maybe Evie, you can speak on behalf of, some of the ideas that Cleveland Water Alliance might have with that. But, for one, as I mentioned before, we do know that you have such a reputable and strong group of, not only innovators, but, folks within your network. And so any way that we can make this accessible for them, if it's going to benefit what they're doing, obviously we're open to it.
Well, thanks for pitching that back over to me there, Andrew. I will say, one of the things that that we at Cleveland Water Alliance have talked about is, as we're bringing all of these different, sensor technologies online, how do we enable other innovators who are actually working on platforms, for example, to get access to some of these data streams so they can kind of showcase, different ways to view data. So this is something that we very much are aware of, potential opportunities around that. We haven't figured it out yet. Stay tuned. But we also are looking at, how can we adopt some data standards and development of APIs so that we can make that easy and accessible. Certainly, when Andrew referenced the work that we did with BioCNR and that the work that's ahead this year with In-Situ, that was one of the things that we kind of tried out. BioCNR has a platform. They access different types of data and use that to then apply artificial intelligence to be able to develop these sort of, predictive analytics. And we know that that's going to be a big part of the growth of this market as well. We want to support it. So again, just like Andrew said, it's sort of a long way to answer a question without really a direct answer. But we are very sensitive to the opportunities there, and stay tuned for more on that.
I would say what's nice about the system that we're putting out there is there are multiple means for having access to that data. It's just a matter of getting, permissions from, I guess, the administrators of the data. Because like I said, it's going to be anything that's being captured from our sensors is going to be telemetered. It's sent to our cloud-based data management platform, HydroView. And so right now we're still kind of determining who's going to take ownership of that HydroView account. I know we're going to have some access to be able to look in, but what's nice about it is you can add unlimited users essentially. So we might just, suggest having some sort of, standard login for folks that'd be interested in taking a look at it. That's something that I certainly need to work my way up the ladder from a permissions standpoint, if you will, but that's certainly one way that it could happen. Again, there's the public API available to share that data from HydroView. These sensors that allow you to actually go out and extract data on site via Bluetooth. So if there's folks that are going to be, going out there, there's no special permissions that need to take place in order to have access to the data that's actually captured. So there's a lot of ideas around it, and that's definitely the next discussion that we need to have. Once this equipment gets in hand and once we just start talking about the deployment process and all that, just understanding where the data is going and who's going to have access to it is next. So
Really great. Yeah. So there are a lot of options, and I do think that in terms of the industry, there's going to probably be more complexity before it simplifies. And this is certainly something we hear from users of these technologies is, there's the world is really opening up in terms of data that they can access. And so how do they, curate that data so that they don't get overwhelmed, but at the same time, can see things in a way that makes it meaningful to their decisions. So, interesting times ahead. We have another question here. Have you established priorities for the monitoring areas that you are identifying?
Priorities in regards to what we're looking for, or
I'm guessing, well, since this is in front of me and I get to interpret this question however I want to, I'm gonna refine it and ask, when you decided specific like types of locations that you wanted to deploy your technologies? What went into you prioritizing that? For example, stream versus a pond versus open water and so forth.
Absolutely. So, I would say for the ViewLink and transducer, I think the groundwater side of things is, more well known and using that type of setup for telemetering your water levels. So we definitely wanted to, put that out there in a place that you could start seeing the benefits to getting ahead of, flooding conditions and other issues that are affected and impacted by, changes in stage. So absolutely that played a role there. And then, with the harmful algal bloom setup or the harmful algal bloom monitoring system that we're going to be putting out there, we relied on, some of the folks out there that have experience with, where they anticipate there being events, places of interest, folks that are from the region. So we definitely rely on stakeholders and, the folks that are out there doing it, which I think is fantastic. It's such a collaborative group of people that are all, looking for the same thing, similar goals in mind. So there's certainly a process behind it. And I would say that it's a collaborative effort to make sure that we're putting it out there where it needs to go.
And when we do test our equipment, when it's new sensor technology or new anti-fouling technology, anything like that, we also want to put it into locations where the equipment could struggle normally. So there might be a high sediment fouling location where there's a lot of sand typically that moves through an area, or it might be a buoy where there's a lot of algae growth, or maybe a buoy where there's a lot of barnacle growth. We really want to ensure that our technologies that we're providing to you guys are able to withstand the harshest of conditions too.
That's great. That's a great answer. All right, next question. For Andrew, can you monitor for specific pesticides like atrazine, other agricultural pesticides?
Unfortunately not. Not right now. What on the ag side, something that we've gotten involved in is, nutrient preservation type studies, and, we do have nitrates. But as far as pesticides are concerned, that is not something that we currently have an offering for.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another one of those that I have heard of people using different surrogate analyses, using some of our sensors for some of those things. So that's a possibility as well, where we could do some investigation to see if atrazine could be modeled against specific conductance, for example. So.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, it sounds like maybe you want to add that to your radar, since we got that inquiry. Could you talk a little bit about how you're addressing cybersecurity with IoT devices, potentially opening pathways into your customers' networks?
Carrie, you want to take that one?
So yeah, our all of our cloud devices are actually pretty well protected. When it comes to Hydro-V, for example, there's particular logins and those kind of things that and other security protocols that we put in place to really keep those things from happening. There's additional security. There has been a lot of consideration put into the security of data and also the security of the rest of the customer system. For more information on that stuff, I would definitely direct you guys to the website, because I know that we do have a lot of that information published on there that, we're probably not giving the best answer for that right now, but it is there.
Okay, great. I'm going to actually ask one of my colleagues from CWA to put the website link into the chat so you all can access that. And then in the meantime, I have a comment here. I think with telemeter data, there are concerns about reliable transmission. How does your telemetry improve that level of confidence?
So I will say that you're absolutely right. I mean, it's going to be completely site dependent on where you're going to get your best signal. We do use a different form of LTE technology in the environmental space for telemetry. It's referred to as M1 or NB-IoT, and also an MNFI SIM. So we do have better network accessibility than what's traditionally been seen from a cellular standpoint. At one point our coverage was actually, it was insanely high for what we had anticipated for just coverage here in the United States. It was up over 95% at one point. But yeah, I mean, it's a real challenge. So, you know, the ways we get ahead of it is making sure that if there's areas that are in question, you know, we're able to get stuff out there and test. We have different types of antenna options. The ViewLink itself has just a traditional type of connector, so you can actually implement third-party type of antennas to it. In some cases where, you know, we've been in, you know, I'll use a far north example, heavily wooded, you know, literally no cell phone signal whatsoever. We were able to implement, you know, a different type of antenna system that ended up working for it. So, you know, obviously just doing your due diligence and making sure that we've run through all the different options. The technology itself that we've implemented into ViewLink has been, you know, much improved in obtaining that, in obtaining signal strength. And then at some point down the road, we will be launching a satellite version of this as well. So, you know, once that comes out, we should have full coverage everywhere.
And Andrew, do you anticipate compatibility with the use of LoRaWAN as we're building out our network to accommodate more and more locations with that?
So, Carrie, I know you have experience specifically with LoRaWAN, right?
Not really, no.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, heads up, if you
No, I know
develop your
that's a growing
compatibility,
thing.
yeah, we will have great coverage for you almost anywhere if
Yeah,
you do.
yeah.
So put that on your radar as well.
Okay.
For sure, for
Yeah, I
sure.
mean,
That is something that's been deployed, you know, kind of along the coastline in particular, especially for storm surge deployments and those kind of things. So it's just, that's where my experience kind of is with LoRaWAN technology. So to hear that you guys are using the LoRaWAN technologies for the Cleveland Water Alliance deployments, that, you know, it's more incentive to, you know, start to develop those technologies so you can use our equipment with your current network.
Yeah, it's definitely been a topic of conversation internally. So I'm sure we're going to have a lot more to come on that here relatively soon.
Good. I'm so glad to hear it. Well, we're down to our last 1 minute. So there's one question: can you monitor algal toxins? And I believe the short answer to that is yes. And I'm going to refer you to the link here in the chat to In-Situ's website. And then the last question is, are there quality assurance, quality control plans for the data collected? Can you give me 15-second answer on that? And then we're going to wrap up.
For the data collected for this upcoming testbed deployment? Or just in general?
I think it was just talking generally.
Just in general, yeah. Are there, uncertainty analyses performed for each sensor? What's the quality control, quality assurance there?
Yeah, I mean, I know. Go ahead, Carrie.
There's not really an error bar on the data that's collected, but with the calibration that you do with the sensors and everything, there is some kind of quality assurance built into that to make sure that, you know, your calibration is okay. So if your calibration is okay, typically the data that you collect is going to be okay, unless there's some kind of fouling or drift. So.
Okay, good. That was fast. Good job, Carrie. Okay, so if you want to learn more about our programs, you can use this little QR code with a great dinosaur in the middle, and that will get you a little bit more information to us so we can follow up with you. And from there, I just want to thank you all for tuning in. Carrie, Andrew, thanks so much for making time for us today. We're so excited to see what's next. And thanks to everyone in our audience. Have a great afternoon.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Evie.
Bye-bye.
Bye.